New Buddha Way Dharma Talks. Geoff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
I'd like to talk about what is generally called the Four Brahmaviharas, which we have talked about before. I'd like to approach it from a different angle this time and rename it. Brahmavihara means the divine abode or divine abidings. Doesn't seem wholly appropriate for the way we are approaching the Buddha's teaching in New Buddha Way. I think the way to look at this is in a functional way. The Buddha was always trying to show us how to do something, how to look into ourselves. So he had a set of instructions. He was giving us a method. He wanted us to engage ourselves in searching for ourself. And this teaching, known as the Four Brahmaviharas, I think is better called, perhaps, the Four Antidotes. Now, an antidote is something that you take, for example, when you've been bitten by a poisonous snake, a mamba or a cobra or some such. Of course, if you don't take the antidote fairly soon, then you risk losing your life or suffering serious injury. Now, it's a similar situation that the Buddha is dealing with, and this is quite an apt metaphor, because he's talking about hindrances and defilements, that is, approaches or attitudes, values, learned life strategies that we have, which are actually a hindrance to our developing awakening, enlightenment, if you like, moving towards peace. So we could regard these very same things, such as greed, hatred, jealousy, fear, as poisons, things that are undermining our potential to move ahead into the light in our lives. So I think the teaching here is about counteracting this with antidotes. So if you take the first Brahmavihara, the first antidote, let's call it, is loving kindness to all sentient beings. Now, taking a functional approach, what is the Buddha actually saying here? He's saying, I think, that loving kindness is an antidote, first of all, to indifference to others, and also an antidote to hatred or dislike or prejudice. If you take indifference, that's, if you like, the passive version of what it is that we are seeking to face and challenge. Indifference is where we just don't think, if you like, or tend to other people and other people's outlook on life, their needs, and we may not actually even love ourselves, in the sense that we're not very aware of what our true needs are. We're very much caught up in beliefs handed down to us about what our needs are. So the antidote here is to what you may call indifference, in the sense that we are just not attending to or aware of the need that we human beings have for wisdom and peace and harmony and creativity. And loving kindness is something that's very positive, in that it doesn't wait to be asked, it doesn't wait for a demand. It's a natural sense of giving to others and to other creatures. So it's an attitude, it's a value, if you like. When we think of this antidote, we may also think of it in relation to something that's much harsher, something that's much more difficult perhaps to overcome, and that is hatred. Hatred, of course, can be very strong and lead to harm to others and even to violence. At a lower level, there is prejudice, there is dislike, and so on. Now, loving kindness is an antidote. It is saying dissolve those hindrances to peace by being open-hearted, by giving, by being kind. This is a little bit different from compassion, which is the next Brahmavihara. Compassion is responding to suffering. In the case of loving kindness, we don't wait for suffering in order to respond. We just naturally give to others, because of course we know that we too would like to receive love and attention and kindness from others. So there you have it. Loving kindness is an antidote to something. It's something functional. It's something which we can start to reorientate ourselves towards. And then the second is compassion, which is a response to the suffering of all human beings, the suffering of all creatures at some level or another. And this is an antidote to callousness and to cruelty. Callousness is, if you like, the passive version. Cruelty is the active version of this blockage we suffer from. So callousness is where we don't actually take action to relieve someone's suffering, even though we could. When someone is in need, we sometimes fall back on the defense that it's not in the contract, or it's not my obligation, or it's not my duty, or it's nothing to do with me, the suffering that you have. Therefore, go away, get out, move on, and I'm not responding. This is a kind of a cold, aloof attitude to the suffering of others. Of course, there is a much more active version, which is when I am cruel to others. And I can be cruel in small ways, and I can be cruel in very large ways of brutality, violence, even murder and massacre. So compassion is saying this is an antidote to those destructive obstructions in human nature. The compassion is identifying with others, seeing myself in others, seeing others in myself, so that I will be more responsive to their suffering and not act in a callous way, let alone a cruel way. The third antidote is selfless joy, or joyful selflessness. It's a concept which is perhaps sounds a little strange at first, but the idea here, I think, is, and capture the sense of it, if we see it as an antidote to ingratitude and cynicism. Ingratitude is a state of just taking things for granted, and therefore not participating in the joy of things that you already have and what others may do for you that perhaps we just overlook. So we're being in a state of ingratitude, which is a matter of degree, of course, is the absence of joy. Joy is when one feels gratitude for all kinds of things, including those things that we take for granted, the very air that we breathe. And of course, cynicism is the active, corrosive version of this. It is a general attitude. It's a general attitude that nothing really is good or right or helpful or conducive to our peace. That even those things which appear to be so are not really. So there will be an ulterior motive, it is said, or a different interpretation, in which everything is rather bleak. And I think this is a sad state of mind for anyone to be in, actually, because it's, I think it's defensive. It's a giving up on the world and losing hope in human beings. An antidote to this is selfless joy. To be selfless, to do as much as one can for others, and to be grateful and joyful in doing that. So here again we have Brahmaviharas seen as an antidote to states of mind or attitudes which are unhelpful to us in developing as human beings. Then fourthly, the fourth Brahmavihara is equanimity, which is about composure, about balance. And what is this an antidote to? Well, it's an antidote to agitation. It's an antidote to overreaction or just reaction. Anything that throws us off balance. So if we take agitation, we can be agitated in our minds by many things that go on in the daytime. Interruptions, disappointments, sarcasms, expectations that turn out to be false, sudden, quite unexpected turns of events. There's a lot to be agitated about. We dwell on the past and we worry about the future. Equanimity is an antidote to that. It's an antidote in the sense that if we learn to meditate, we learn to be mindful, we learn how to concentrate the mind, we make a shift in our values, then we have resilience to those knocks and pushes against our very being, and stay fairly steady. Of course, equanimity is also an antidote to overreaction, in that I may during the day get some abuse or some sarcasm or some other form of unpleasantness, or when I'm driving or when I'm in the office, or even from family members, or especially from family members sometimes. And my first response will be perhaps an overreaction, that this will be seen as some sort of assault on my ego. Myself is under threat, and I will respond immediately in an equally sarcastic or abusive or even violent way, and then the situation, of course, is now set to get completely out of hand. Overreaction, obviously enough, is not the way to go, but let's consider even our ordinary reactions and put in that little gap, little time gap between the stimulus and the response, so that I don't react. I consider, find an appropriate way of moving through that situation so as not to inflame it. It doesn't mean that I'm passive. It doesn't mean that I'm everyone's doormat. In fact, this requires quite a lot of strength. It's the strength that comes from stability, and the stability that comes from strength. So equanimity is also an antidote. It's an antidote to life's difficulties and our trials and tribulations, so that we stay on an even keel. And such an even keel can be attained through meditation. So there you have the four Brahmaviharas, rewritten, if you like, in the context of the Buddha's functional program of moving us towards compassion, wisdom, and peace.
New Buddha Way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.